Radio. It is so good to be with you all today on April 12th, where we are in the States. And wherever you are circling in, it's always a meaningful conversation to have on Rise Out of the Ashes. Evangelist Tia, who usually hosts the radio show, is not able to be with us at this moment, but she might tune in as soon as possible. And if not, then we will be together tonight. I have with us on the show tonight LASHIRA COUNCIL, and she is the executive director of an organization that deals with violence and gun violence, and specifically in her community, and really promoting awareness around this issue. And it comes straight from her heart because she herself has lived a personal, very, very personal experience around gun violence. And we want to hear from her tonight. And then also just to welcome all of our listeners, and also, to remind each and every one of you out there that we are not alone. It can feel that way sometimes, but the more we share our stories around issues that are uncomfortable to talk about, both for the person that is a victim of it, and also for the people that maybe have never heard about it before. These are difficult conversations, but the only way we can rise out of the ashes is to talk about it and share our stories. And then we can find our common humanity and move forward together, holding hands, holding arms, and really trying to address some of the most serious issues that we are facing as a community. So with that, let me just say hello to Evangelist Tia, who has just popped on the screen. Yay, you're here.
Hello, I'm so sorry. I was off a few minutes, but thank you. Thank you, LASHIRA. Thank you, Aaron. I'm so glad that you both are here with us. So, Aaron, I'm just gonna let you take it from here as you've been going.
Okay. Okay, sounds wonderful. Well, I was just introducing LASHIRA onto this evening's show. So can you, LASHIRA, I'll just say a little bit of introduction of myself. I came into contact with Evangelist Tia with our work around Rising Out of the Ashes. It's an organization. We have a 501c3. I'm on her board, and it's such a privilege to be in a circle of people doing really important work for community members that are in need and in our emergency transition out of violent and dangerous situations. And so, Rising Out of the Ashes really fills that need for the community. And it's, like I said, it's just such important work that we do here. There is a GoFundMe link, Rise Out of the Ashes Inc., and where you can donate a 501c3 tax-deductible donation to our work. It's so important that Evangelist Tia has now transitioned into the 501c3 so that she is not taking, all of this weight on herself and bringing people along with her in order to support the work. I myself have my own experience of moving through violence in my past and rising out of the ashes. And I also, the reason why I got in touch with Evangelist Tia probably several years ago now was through my work with Indigenous communities, especially Indigenous women, facing very high rates of murdered and missing instances. And so we developed through the program called House of the Moon, a empowerment and self-defense training program for Native women to also rise out of the ashes. So with that, I'll let LASHIRA, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself, say as much or as little as you'd like, just to get us started, and then we'll get into it.
All right, sounds good. So my name is LASHIRA COUNCIL. I am the Executive Director-elect at Chester Community Coalition. I think it's an interesting story on how I even got connected to Chester Community Coalition.
I have been working in the healthcare system for about 20 years as a drug and alcohol clinical supervisor. And I was at a volunteer event. I am a licensed professional counselor, and I saw the table for Chester Community Coalition, learned about the work that they were doing for families and individuals who have been impacted by gun violence. And I'm like, I want to volunteer my services, my clinical support. So I went in with the idea or plan to volunteer, and then I was offered a part-time position. So I came on as a therapist after the organization was established. And then I eventually became full-time program director, and now here I am as executive director elect. But like Aaron mentioned in the introduction, I have been directly impacted by gun violence as I lost my oldest brother to gun violence in 2002 in the city of Chester, Pennsylvania, where we are located and founded. Um, so I'm very aware of the ripple effects, right, on the family, on the individual, and very aware of the idea that it's a journey, right? There is no, if we're talking about rising out of the ashes, it's the process and being in the process of rising out of the ashes and what that looks like for us. Um, but just a little bit about what Chester Community Coalition does. We provide therapeutic supportive services, again, for individuals or families who have been impacted by gun violence. And by impact, I mean you've witnessed a gun violence event, you've been shot yourself, or you've lost a family member to gun violence. So we provide family therapy sessions or group therapy, and that's from children 2 to 5, where we do art therapy, and then we have a child therapy group that we do, and then we have teens and adults, and all of those groups meet at the same time with the idea that families are getting the same information on how to cope, and then being able to go home and talk about it over dinner, right? And so we also provide case management services to address some of the other underlying issues or basic needs: employment, food, housing, individual therapy. And one of our newest programs is our hospital linked intervention program, where we have an intervention specialist, or what some might call a credible messenger. So this is someone who has been directly impacted, in which they've been a victim of gun violence. So he's stationed in the emergency department of the hospital. And anyone coming through with a gunshot wound or stabbing, we immediately engage them in services once they're stable. We support the family throughout the entire process, with the goal to follow them in the community and continue to provide those services on their journey to healing. So that's some of the things that we do.
Well, that's a lot. Well, again, I thank you so much. I thank you both for being here. Well, I want to start first with Chester Community Coalition, the contact information. One is your organization just for Chester. Can other can families who are affected by gun violence, for instance, Philadelphia or nearby counties, are your services available outside of Chester? And then if you could share the contact information for our listeners and viewers to be able to take part of your services.
Okay. So our services are, sorry, because I'm trying to grab my brochure, are for Chester, the city of Chester, and residents of Delaware County only. But what I want to also make clear is that since we've started, it has spread throughout the United States. So there are other organizations like ours that we have began to collaborate with, that if someone were to come in contact with them, we would do a warm handoff to or organization like ours where they live.
Okay. So you would connect families to the, okay, great.
If they were outside of our servicing area.
Okay. And can you share your contact information for those who are in your area?
Okay, for those who are in our area, our main contact number and the best way to get in contact with us and learn more or get connected to our services is 610-368-0714. or you could also go to our website at www.chestercommunitycoalition.org and fill out the contact us sheet, and we'll have someone also get in contact with you as well. We're on social media at Facebook at Chester Community Coalition. Chester Community Coalition. If you wanted to send us an instant message, we're also on Instagram at Chester Community Coalition. If you needed to make contact with us in that way.
Okay, and so we have, Erin and I, we have a good understanding of what Chester Community Coalition is, and you've just given a beautiful description of some of the things that you guys do. But I want to go back, like, to the beginning. Like, why does Chester Community Coalition exist?
Okay, so I want to say it was back in between 2016 and 2017. We noticed that there was a spike in shooting events and people losing their lives to gun violence in the city of Chester. So the Sisters of St. Francis, who were doing work in Chester, started to look at some of the underlying issues related to trauma and gun violence. So there was a need to add the therapeutic piece in addition to the legal aspect when we're talking about getting guns off the street or getting violent offenders off the street. So we started to think about, what do we do before they get there, right? So what is underneath of all of the things that result in gun violence? So that highlighted the importance of focusing on mental health and developing coping skills and addressing trauma. And so then that's when the group or the family therapy session started. And then from there, it was like, okay, there's a little decrease, but there's a need for more attention to ways to address, the mental health issues connected to gun violence. And so since then, that's how we've been able to expand our program as we see the needs for prevention, right? And education and mental health training for schools and community members. I know one of our recent goals is to change the stigma as it relates to how members of our community perceive seeking therapy to address, underlying issues in whether it be depression, anxiety, anger. And I think we are making, small steps in that area.
Mm-hmm. And the services that you offer, definitely victims and survivors come to mind who are dealing with gun violence. But do you offer services to perpetrators? Do you offer help or education? Because, when we talk about domestic violence, and I do say we support victims and survivors, but we never say abusers and perpetrators should just be taken and thrown away and that's it, because there is help that is needed on the other side. I am not the one to offer that help on the other side. Like, that's not my forte, but I do understand it's the area that needs to be addressed. So as you do what you do for victims and survivors and families of gun violence, do you offer support or help or education on the other side where perpetrators are concerned?
Absolutely. We actually have a partnership or collaboration with the DA's office. And so they refer individuals to us who may be being released from prison and had gun violence related incidents for therapy or peer support. We also had a goal or in the process of having a program in the prison for individuals that may be that are on their way to being released after having a gun violence related event. And that curriculum is around the mental health support that is required and providing some education around ways to cope with adjusting back to the community, right? With the perceived new mentality. But at the same time, when we talk about gun violence and gun violence events that lead to imprisonment and feeling safe once you're released. So how do I just change my entire life, change the way I think when there is a risk for retaliation?
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the things that we try to navigate through. And that's when we really need members who are credible messengers in the community to support our work as well, right? Because I'm not as credible as someone who's engaged in that lifestyle. So we
Right.
need to also build partnerships with members of the community for our work to be effective.
Right. And do you find, and because of what we do, what Aaron and I do, working with missing and murder, Indigenous women, domestic violence, sexual assault, as we've often shared many times before on the program, what we do intersects with other areas all the time. We deal with domestic violence, but we will find issues of homelessness. We will find homelessness. We find issues of drug and alcohol abuse, issues of human trafficking. Um, all of these different areas, they cross paths. Do you find, and what you do, working with the gun violence issue, do you cross paths with domestic violence, sexual assault, the drug and alcohol addiction, and if you do, how do you see that?
So I think we can also absolutely, to answer your question, right? We definitely absolutely see those things cross paths, and I think that that's where the need for case management support came from, right? To help address some of these underlying issues and connect them because we have a mission, vision, and values, right? So we want to stay in our scope. So if it is outside of our scope, we have also built connections with individuals or organizations that specialize in domestic violence. Like we have partnerships with WAR or Women Against Rape or all of the other organizations that address those underlying issues, substance abuse facilities, being able to refer someone to drug and alcohol treatment facility is something that we're able to do with our case management connections. But if they're in therapy, I think that's one of the things that we're addressing, right? So not just the gun violence related event,
Right.
all of the things that are underneath that can interfere with the healing process because it's way deeper than the event itself.
Right. So I want to take a moment here. I want to share some resources with our listeners and viewers. First, I want to share again Chester Community Coalition. Can I share the address? Are individuals able to just walk in? Okay. So the address is 703 Central Avenue. They are located in Chester, Pennsylvania. The zip is 19013. And again, the phone number is 610-368-0714. I want to share the National Teen Dating Abuse Helpline. This is in the United States. Their website is loveisrespect.org. Their number is 1-866-331-9474. And the Suicide and Crisis Helpline, the Lifeline provides 24/7 free and confidential support for people in distress. It's the 988 Lifeline. Their website is 988lifeline.org. You can call or text the number 988. And outside of the United States, you can go to the website findahelpline.com. So I wanted to share those resources. And I do want to ask, a lot of the information that we share, their hotline numbers that have 24-hour access. Is that something that Chester Community does, or is there like you just make an appointment to come in, or do you have 24-hour?
We do not. We are not 24 hours. But on our message, we do provide contact information for, if someone calls and they're in a crisis situation, who they could contact. But we are not 24 hours.
Okay. So the next question that I wanted to ask, and I've been thinking about this because I wanted to phrase it the right way. And then Aaron, I'll go to you for a question or comment after this. But I wanted to ask, is there like a profile that you recognize in dealing with gun violence? Do you do you create a profile? Do you have a profile in mind to go for prevention efforts? So, I mean, for instance, do you focus on boys, like teenage boys? Like, within your information, do you have enough information to tell you this group is more susceptible to gun violence? Like, we need to get to boys in high school, or maybe we need to get to African American boys, or so I'm trying to ask the question the right way.
I got you. I got
Right? So,
you.
okay, so do you have, and I mean not in a bad way, like
It's not. I got you. Okay. So Black males ages 18 to 24, right? So the data supports that's where we need to focus our efforts.
Okay.
But both prevention and intervention, right? So there may have been an event already within that age group, but then we have to provide some supportive services when the event occurs. So we have a collaborative that was created and is funded by the government through PCCD for us that targets that age demographic. So when someone comes in, we're connecting them to all of the services to the organ that are in the collaborative. And those organizations, I may miss some, are CASA Youth Advocates, Widener University, Crozier Hospital, the Boys and Girls Club, Making a Change group that provides mentorship. I hope I'm not missing anything. I don't want nobody calling me tomorrow. But I think, but I think that's it. So we work really. Chester Education Foundation, right? So what we try to do is pull all of the organizations in Chester that are doing the violence prevention work and be like a resource, a network of resources, right? So if someone comes to Chester Education Foundation for an educational resource, but also has been impacted by gun violence in the ways in which I mentioned, that's an immediate referral to us. So again, the data supports it, right? It's not being mean, it's what's happening. It's the reality. Like, so that's the answer is yes, that's the demographic, and that's how it's been very targeted for us to try, because we want to see if, surrounding them with these resources and support will, decrease these events for them. I think that's our goal. We want that to happen.
Okay. And when you, I'm sorry, Aaron, like I'm just thinking of this question now, and I'll go right to Aaron, but as you're targeting this group, do you find that they are receptive? I mean, when you're dealing with prevention and intervention, when you step in, when you bring your tools and your resources, are they receptive to the help, or is it like I don't need you, I don't want you, I'll figure this out on my own?
Okay, we get both, right? We get those who are receptive in private, but let's not forget they're going back into their community when they leave us, right? And there's a lot of inconsistencies at the start, but building rapport and trust is like the first goals we have, right? It's not let's get right into you taking advantage of these services. The most important part of the process for us and working with them is building rapport and trust. A lot of our staff are from the community, right? So they're very aware of what's happening, not just in the community in real time, but in the community on social media, right? So being able to speak the language and speak to them about what's really happening and what their real options are for change. Because I can present you with anything, right? But what's the real option for change for me? Is it too late for change for me?
Right.
So meeting them where they're at and they really exploring their options and supporting them the best way we can on the journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Aaron, do you have a question or comment?
I have so many questions.
I know, me too. Like I had to stop because I'm like,
how many hours do you have? So I think, LaShira, I wanted to ask you about if I wasn't sure if maybe you could share, and you don't even have to use a person's name, maybe a couple of examples, because you are really in it. I mean, you are how they say, on the front lines and in the weeds. Like you're doing that work on that level. It's not just out here.
Mhm.
And do you have a story of a person that came in one state, experienced the services, went out in a different way? And again, it doesn't have to be this hero's journey necessarily. Like
Right.
the real grit to this issue, and like what people are facing
Right.
in this.
Yeah, absolutely. I can just share a quick example of someone who came in through the hospital as a victim of gun violence and was like, I'm retaliating, right? I'm gonna get my lick back, right? And I could say, no, don't do that. You're gonna get arrested or you're gonna get shot. But let's weigh the options then. Okay, if that's what you're gonna do, let's weigh the options. So let's say you get away with it. What does your life look like after that, right? Let's say you don't get away with it and you get incarcerated. Who's going to take care of your daughter who you say you really value that relationship? Or, I mean, we got to make plans. If this is the route we're going to take, what do our plans look like? Right. So that particular individual spent some time in the hospital, and our team would visit them every day, just checking up on you, just see how you feeling emotionally and mentally today. Do you need anything? Do you need a charger? Do you need me to call somebody for you? Do you need me to talk to your nurse? Right. Just maintaining that, building that rapport and trust. And so by the time that person was discharged, they stayed connected to services, accepted and started individual therapy, and had a change in plans. Now, will that happen all the time? I don't, I'm going to say not all the time, right?
Yeah.
But I think that was a great example of how the program and the services can work. But I think with any emotion, right, we need some time. Right. We need time.
Yeah.
Emotions pass. They don't last forever. They come and go, but they do go, and give us the opportunity to think objectively or logically sometimes. Sometimes we have those windows to be able to do that. So taking advantage of that is something that we also try to be mindful of as well.
Yeah. And just to dovetail off of that, do you still stay, like, would you have an example of somebody that, let's say, didn't change the plan or went a different direction? Do you have any way of keeping in touch with that scenario, or would you just have no way of knowing because they've left your services? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So we do offer, even when someone doesn't accept our services, they're like, "No, we're good." Again, time. So maybe like just calling to check in, not to get you to accept services, just to see how you're doing. Did you make your follow-up doctor's appointment, right? Or do you need any help with that? Do you need groceries, right? Just checking on that. But I will tell you that we learn a lot from social media. So some people we don't have to keep tabs up on, because a lot of things happen in real time or beforehand on social media.
Wow.
And we're able to say, oh, that's the guy who declined services, for us. Or, yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So I totally understand the volunteer portion of your services, reaching out to offer help, and it's like I can accept it if I want to or not, or I can call, I can come to the office if I want to or not. But is there any part of your program that's actually mandatory? Like, would any of your services be court appointed?
No, that's a great question. Because we get that all the time. And so, although we do have like a collaborative relationship with adult and juvenile probation, it's not mandated for us, even if it's mandated for them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Um, So we're very limited in the information that we're reporting to probation. They come yes or no, like that's as far as it's going, but they're not mandated to treatment with us. But if they are eligible for services, like been impacted by gun violence, and they've been mandated, and they come in voluntarily and participate and complete their therapy sessions, and then they tell their probation officer, "I completed therapy." That's what happened. But all of our services are voluntary.
Okay. Can you talk a bit more about the therapeutic trauma therapy? Because I'm trying to envision it, because normally, I think of therapy, no matter what the subject is, I think of it as, you can have group therapy, but that group is alike. So we're talking to all men, or we're talking to all women, or we're talking to all teenagers, or it's individual therapy. But you talked about having different individuals, so and adult and children together.
No, they're in separate groups. So
okay,
but they've all lost. So this is this is called our healing and strength group. So the one thing that they have in common is that they've lost a loved one to gun violence, but they are in separate groups by age, and
okay.
we follow the same content as far as the curriculum is concerned, but in an age appropriate way. So they're kind of getting the same information, so they can share it and talk about it outside of the group setting.
Okay. Oh, great. Now I got you, because I was trying to figure out like how that works.
Oh, that would be
I mean, if you can master that, I'm like, you got kids and adults together, and you can cover the same topic, and they both get it. They both understand, like, you're doing something special there. But thank you for clearing that up. I want to ask about the training that your counselors and your team at Chester County, the training that you have to be able to come into this program and help, because we're talking about gun violence. I mean, it's like, just like domestic violence. It's like experience is a great teacher, but I'm quite sure you don't put an ad in the newspaper and say, "Hey, if you've been affected by gun violence, this position is open." So, like, what are the requirements, and what's the training to be able to step into Chester community and help victims and perpetrators?
Okay. So our therapists are master's level therapists. So you do have to have a master's in social work or mental health counseling. And they are currently trained in cognitive processing therapy. So that's a protocol that's used to treat post-traumatic stress disorder. And I also want to add, before I keep going, that the training doesn't stop after onboarding. Like, we're training now, right? We want to keep up on our professional development and growth. But that's our therapist. So they're, again, trained in cognitive processing therapy with ongoing training in psychological first aid. All of our staff take, from administration. They all take psychological first aid. They all take trauma 101. There's trauma 101 to 108 that our whole staff takes. Some of our staff are trained in youth mental health first aid, adult mental health first aid, teen mental health first aid. And then I also don't want to leave out that we also encourage our staff to get some support themselves, right? Because this work is a heavy lift. So our team is our priority when making sure that they're okay, in order to do the work as well. Case management gets their specialized case management services, just like our outreach worker. She also gets our psychological first aid, mental health first aid training. I don't want to make sure I'm missing in. So I think there's about maybe 3 or 4 onboarding trainings that everyone who's joining our team takes. Case management is a bachelor's level position, so you do have to have a bachelor's degree to be a case manager with Chester Community Coalition. Our violence intervention specialist is high school diploma or bachelor's degree, depending on which, whether it's in the hospital or in the community. What else? Our violence intervention specialist. Outreach worker position is a associate's degree position. And I think we have a development director who is a master's degree. But those positions are currently filled. But
well, maybe you guys will start working on a satellite office, another office somewhere else. I want to ask about your education and awareness efforts. For instance, do you go into the school districts in Chester to present your program? Do you go into other organizations and present, or is it, you have to be found and we come into your office and then you teach us, you share with us, you train? Do you go out? Do you venture out? Do you have events and projects where you go into the community?
We are in these streets, okay? So we do teen mental health first aid in the high schools and to youth serving organizations throughout Delaware County. We also offer mental health first aid to our community members. We have a gun safety training that one of our case managers who's trained to do gun safety that we do for community members. We have our annual peace walk, which is coming up, plug, June 8th. It's a walk that we take through Chester, and we end at a park where we have activities, we have a memorial service. It's a part of Gun Violence Prevention Awareness Week. We have our outreach worker who's at most of the community events that happen throughout Chester and Delaware County. Just informing the community of our services and giving them opportunities to sign up for services with us. We have a teen talk group that we offer to teens throughout the community, including our Boys and Girls Club. We partner to do art therapy in the school system. And we also offer a compassion, fatigue, and trauma training as a part of professional development for the school administration throughout the county as well. So yeah, we out here.
Oh, this is great. This is awesome information. I want to ask you, can you please tell us and explain to us what mental health first aid is? Because this is the very first time
Okay.
I've heard that term, mental health first aid.
I mean, we talk about first aid, right? Take the mental health off, right? We talk about how to apply a Band-Aid. But we provide that education on some of the signs and symptoms of, someone who's in need of mental health support, right? And naming what one may be experiencing and really getting some education around that, and then developing some skills to cope with it, to include seeking some professional help. And also being able to recognize it in others. And what should I do if I notice that somebody is experiencing a mental health crisis?
Okay. Thank you so much. So I just thought of a question, and then Aaron, I'll go to you for a question and comment. If you could please, can you expand on literally what gun safety is? Because I know a lot of different things can come to mind. I mean, gun safety, it's like, I know I think of going to a range and teaching someone how to use this weapon the correct way, how to load it, unload, how to clean it. Or it could be, so if you just that's your definition of gun safety, so we're all on the same page.
So we're not teaching someone how to use a gun.
Yes.
Right? But if you come in contact with the gun, how to be safe around and with it. If you're a gun owner, because there are legal gun owners out here, but how to be safe and how to keep others safe, right, when they're come in contact, or how to prevent them from coming in contact with your firearm.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Aaron?
Yeah. Okay. So LaShira, I wanted to ask you about, can you share a little bit around your passion for this work? And then this might be, and then beyond that, you having these conversations when you've had a personal experience of your own. Like, how do you take care of yourself? Like, I know about being driven from the passion of an experience, but then I also had to face in my work when it was becoming too much for me, because I was still dealing with the aftermath effects that I wasn't aware of from my personal violence experience. So I was wondering if you have anything you'd like to share around that for yourself.
Okay, you asked me 2 questions, so I just want to make sure I answer. So the last one I heard was, how do I take care of myself, right? With my
Yeah, or just even if it's not a question, but just your story about kind of where,
Okay.
your passion came from, but then you're in it all the time, and how does that work for you, and how,
Okay.
yeah, and then how do you take care of yourself? Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, as I shared, I lost my brother to gun violence in 2002, but my passion is for my city, right? So, it's around the work because at the foundation is my city. I was born and raised in Chester. Um, and I live in outside of of Chester now, but I've always worked in Chester, right? That's my passion is for my city, whether I'm living there or not. I've always said I'm going to be working in Chester. Like, I want to be a part of change in Chester. Like, that's always been. So I believe in a higher power, but so I feel like my higher power brought me here. Like, this is part of my purpose. This is a part of what I've always wanted to do as it relates to giving. I mean, I didn't know this is where how I wanted to help, right? I was working in drug and alcohol for 20 years. But I think that the way that the organization has been established, it takes me a little bit deeper until how I can be a part of that change. And I think what helps me do this work, in addition to have personal experiences, is like the outcome, right? So recognize that I'm going to be on this journey, right? This is a journey. I'm not healed, right? ED. This is a journey, but a part of this process for me is supporting and helping others by sharing how I navigate through it in a way that is healthy, in a way that I'm able to still live a fulfilling life, still experience joy, still experience all of these things, still experience grief. Like, I'm alive to experience grief, right? I got to be grateful for that, that I'm here to experience these things. So yeah, and I take care of myself by just recognizing it, right? If it's not a good day, it's not a good day. I miss my brother.
Right.
Like, I miss my brother today. I know he's not coming back. Like, I'm very aware of that, but I think it's okay to navigate through this process in a way that you can be real with yourself. It's okay.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. I also wanted to ask you, as a counselor, and with all of your extensive experience, what about gun violence trauma do you think is unique? Like, what are some of the unique aspects of the trauma associated with gun violence?
I want to say the one thing that is going to be a little interesting. There's not a lot of differences between trauma related to gun violence, trauma related to abuse, trauma related to, like, these traumatic experiences impact us in very similar ways. Right.
Wow.
So I definitely am able to see the connection. I was in a meeting one time and we were talking about gun violence, and I had just transitioned from working in substance use. I'm like, this sounds like some of the treatment protocols we would use to
Right.
address substance use, right? A support group, like long-term things to address grief, like we're addressing grief is substance abuse, and we're addressing grief as a part of gun violence. So as much as they're different, there's a lot of similarities in the way that we respond to these traumatic events.
Mm. Awesome.
Wow. So, LaShira, I want to ask you, do you find that your office is interacting with different religious organizations and different cultural groups? Is that an issue, or is it just blanket gun violence and we don't have to look at those nuances of religion? Does that come into play?
If we're talking about spirituality as a protective factor, we and if the individual identifies it as a protective factor and a strength, we're definitely looking at that as a part of their therapeutic services. We do outreach to churches and mosques and religious organizations. They support our cause and we provide services to them. Where we're located is in the basement of a church. So but we're religiously and politically neutral. You heard me say that. Um, but we definitely, seek to provide, listen, there gun violence, trauma, grief does not discriminate, right? So
Exactly.
we absolutely can. Can we benefit from tailoring some of our services to community members who we haven't been able to reach because we don't have the staff, as it relates to being able to get engaged with them. Whether there be language barriers, we can absolutely benefit from that, and that's one of the things that we're working on because we have Hispanic community members who have been
Yeah.
impacted by gun violence that we want to provide our support and services to.
Mhm. So, are you in the mode of always looking to see what we can do better, how we can do it differently? Is it a constant growth? Is
Absolutely.
that in the forefront?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we've grown from where we started, with one group, right? To now we have all of these programs. We have to shift. We have to continue to explore and research and collect data and talk to the people first, right? Talk to the people so they can share with us what's going on and what they believe would be most effective and helpful. So that's why we also have focus groups. We have community member focus groups. We got to hear from the people. We can't just go out there and determining what the people need.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay. And so we full well understand the um, no political affiliations. I think every organization has made that clear. But I do want to ask, do you have support from local politicians? Do you have support from your local police departments? Is there a presence where they are saying, like, this is not about votes, this is not about Republican, this is not about Democrats, but gun violence is an issue for us all? Do you have the support from the political and armed forces arenas?
Okay. It's a journey, right? But I think we're on it. We actually last week had a meeting with our mayor. We also had a meeting like the day prior with the senator, the mayor, the commissioner. Chester Community Coalition's goal is to collaborate as much as we can, right? So we want to build a relationship with the local law enforcement. So when a gun violence event happens, they're calling us like, this happened. Is there any support that you can provide? Or I keep coming in contact with this one individual and I know that he lost his brother yesterday, or is there a way that we can connect them to your services? But to answer your question, yes, we have support. I do felt like we were given the opportunity to share our challenges, what's been working, and like blatantly asking, for support. So I also think that that's a journey, right? I know that there's a lot going on. There's a lot of different causes, but I think that gun violence, for right now, is getting attention. Could it use some more? Absolutely.
Wow. I am again. I'm completely impressed because I just to learn of this organization. I learned of your organization because I went to an event that was dealing with mental health issues, and I was asked to speak at that event about domestic violence, how mental health issues intersect with domestic violence, and your organization was there to talk about gun violence and how mental health issues intersect with gun violence. And that was the first that I heard of your program, your organization. And I think it's just, it's good to know that it's there. Like everything isn't the uphill battle. I mean, it's like you turn on a TV and somebody just got shot, and then 5 minutes later, somebody else is shot. But to hear of a program that's doing something about it, to support not only the victims and survivors and perpetrators, but to have some kind of prevention education before we get to that point. It's to hear of it, and I'm glad that I came across it. But we need to help you get out there so individuals know this program does exist. Some help is there, and you can take advantage of it. So I am absolutely impressed. Um, and I just so many questions are just popping up, and I'm thinking about again how you intersect with so many other areas. So can you talk about the pressure that adds, because really you're not just dealing with gun violence. You talked about dealing with homelessness, dealing with the emergency of lack of food. Can you talk about how the pressures of a drug and alcohol situation can bring onto the organization as well, the help that you're trying to get? Because again, it's not just gun violence. You intersect with these other areas. So how does that pressure affect you all?
I think we've been blessed to have resources and be able to build resources, right? To be able to refer, like I said, those individuals who have to address their substance use disorder before diving into therapy, right? Because you're not going to therapy is going to be as impactful if you're under the influence the entire time. So it's a process, and we'll take it slowly with you, and we'll collaborate with other teams and team members, and we'll do warm handoffs. But to answer your question about the pressure, I think what helps us is being able to stay in our lane, right? So when you start to creep outside your lane, that's when the pressure comes in. So being able to recognize what we have the capacity to do and what we say we're going to do, right? So we can't be everything to everybody, but we can build our resources and support them in that way. So just being mindful of our mission, vision, and values, because it's easy to creep outside of that in this line of work.
Yeah.
But I think that and sometimes you can feel when we're creeping. It's like we got to check it. Like, what is happening? We are all over the place doing too many things. When did we start doing that? Like when we started saying, when did we start doing that? It's time to make a reset.
I have one more question,
Okay.
and then Erin, I'll ask you for a question or comment, and we're just under the hour. This is just going by so fast. I definitely would love to have you come back, because just hearing you and speaking with you in just these few moments, there's just so much more to trust the community than I thought. I mean, and I've read the information. I went to the website, but there's just so much more that's there. I think it's worth continuing to share. But I want to ask you, where do you want to see your program in the next few months? Like what's a long-term goal that you're working towards?
I think we're definitely all right. So, in terms of providing services and support, the next few months it's going to be close to summer, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
we definitely want to have some additional summer programming up and running for our youth. They'll be out of school, so we want to be able to providing any supportive services we can during that time. I think that we also want to see us get additional funding in the next few months. Um, so being able to seek and receive additional funding from different funding streams is a place that I would like to see us in the next few months. Where I want to see Chester is I want us to have a summer with record low numbers in gun violence events over the course of the summer.
Wow, that's awesome. Erin?
Yes. I was going to ask also if you could elaborate a little on maybe some of the trends you've seen since you've gotten involved with the coalition. Where is social media playing a part? Are national issues playing a part? Are, COVID, like what have you noticed personally, just being in the work?
Social media, social media, social media, social media. Um, just in so many ways when we talk about values and how values have shifted, and this could be also connected to COVID when we spent a lot of time inside, and then that's where we had more opportunities to start this relationship with social media, and now it's continuing to play out. But back to value, and like folks value likes and views, and they will disrespect any and everybody for that. There's so many amongst the youth diss songs that perpetuate real life stuff in the street.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, so when it comes to social media and gun violence, at least from what I'm seeing, there definitely is a bigger connection when it comes to the youth. And then violence in general, right? If you get on social media and embarrass me, I'm gonna have to embarrass you in some way, whether that's
Mhm.
through violence or when I see you, it's on. When this is that, right? So once you see it on social media, you have to do it. Um, so that's the social media piece when it comes to things that are trending now that I'm noticing and even want to do my own research and focus groups around.
Well, I was going to ask about the social media aspect. We
Mhm.
know the positives of social media. We know how it can help, and as you said earlier, there are times when you can actually just not keep tabs on a person, but you can see how, this person is doing. On the
Mhm.
other side of that, do you find for your organization and specifically what you do in gun violence is social media a problem at times because one group or one person is aggravating another when you're trying to quell a situation, you're trying to keep it under control, but then you got these kids playing in a fight basically or doing whatever. Is that something that your office watches? Do you keep track of that, and is it a huge problem for you?
We absolutely do, and I think the only problem for us is what we're able to do about it when we're seeing it.
Okay, so that does your contact or help with working with police departments, does that come in that scenario or that help? If you guys see something brewing, do you contact the police department and say, hey, this is what we're seeing right now?
So here is what we do. If we see something brewing and we know who the players are, we find out who the credible messengers are. So we do not go to law enforcement. We go to credible messengers whose role is to mediate situations like that we notice are brewing. And most times they're able to mediate the situations. It hasn't happened frequently, but it is increasing in frequency. So again, I'm going to say we've been blessed to be able to identify those individuals in the community that are credible enough, because not everybody is, um, to be able to mediate or just put a pause on what we see.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is great. I thank you so much for being here with us. I, again, definitely would love to have you come back just to be able to expound more and
Okay.
talk more, to open the eyes and ears of listeners and viewers. I really appreciate you being here and the information that you've offered and what your organization does. And I'm going to ask that you would leave us with our final words on tonight. What would you say, not only to Chester, but every community like Chester in the United States, around the globe, that's dealing with gun violence on some level? What message would you leave us with all tonight?
Change happens at the speed of trust. So building these trusting relationships can definitely play a part in mitigating some of these violence and creating spaces for folks to express their feelings can be helpful in mitigating some of this violence.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. Aaron, do you have a final word for us on tonight?
Only to thank LaShira for her incredible voice and strong voice on this issue, and I feel your positive heart energy just emanating from you, and that love is exactly what so many people need right now that are facing these dire issues. And I just appreciate you so much for your hard work. Thank you so much.
Thank you both for having me. I always say we're the hope dealers. We're just out here dealing hope.
I love it.
Yes,
Oh,
yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you both for being here. Love Bay, if you want to catch up on previous episodes from our program, you can visit our YouTube channel, Suffering in Silence TV. We thank you so much for joining Suffering in Silence with Evangelist Tia here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We're here with you every Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. And Love Bay, we're continuing to rise out of the ashes together. Good evening.
Thank you.